Hey you, thanks for stopping by. The day's done, so let's settle in and make ourselves comfortable. I brought a few stories to share. The towel that was almost dry. There was a towel folded neatly on a hook behind the door. Not damp, not fresh, just holding a little warmth from something recent. It had dried most of the way, but hadn't finished the job. The corner was slightly tucked under, like it had tried to rest flat and changed its mind halfway. It didn't smell like detergent anymore, just fabric and quiet. It was the kind of towel you might forget about until you noticed it was still warm, the kind you don't remember using, but never think to move. No one needed it. It didn't need anyone either. It was still doing what it was supposed to do, even if that wasn't much. The fruit that wasn't picked. At the edge of a small orchard, there was a single apple hanging low on a branch. The others had been taken, gathered, eaten, or lost to time, but this one stayed. Not bruised, not perfect, just overlooked. The sun touched it in the late afternoon, making its skin look glossier than it was. A breeze moved the branch, but not enough to make it fall. It would stay there until it dropped, not because of decay or decision, but because gravity doing what it always does. And when it finally landed, no one would be around to hear it, and that would be okay. The chair that wasn't pulled in. At the dining table, one wooden chair sat slightly askew, not pushed in, not far out, just a few inches off where it should have been. There were no crumbs on the seat, no pressure on the cushion. It didn't creak or lean. It simply occupied a space that wasn't quite right, but wasn't bothering anyone. The sun caught one leg at the wrong angle. The shadow didn't match the rest. No one fixed it. No one noticed. It hadn't been used in days, maybe weeks, but it never asked to be moved. It just stayed there, waiting for nothing. The pillow that learned the shape of a head. One pillow on the bed was softer than the others. Not because of stuffing, but because it had been shaped over time by someone's weight and someone's sleep. It sloped gently in one place, dipped in another, not crushed, not lumpy, just formed. If you flipped it over, the shape would vanish. But on this side, it held a small indentation that didn't push back. It had stopped trying to spring back long ago. It wasn't flat. It wasn't broken. Just remembered. And it never needed fluffing. It already knew what it was. The fence that forgot it had a job. Behind a row of hedges, a wooden fence ran straight in a line for most of its length, until it didn't. One panel had leaned just slightly to the left and never corrected itself. The wood had grayed, a nail had lifted up from the top corner, just enough to notice if you stared at it, but no one did. The grass had grown up around the base. A vine curled through one crack and out another. It was still technically a fence, still standing, still dividing space, but it had stopped trying to be useful. It just stayed where it always had been, and that was just fine. The door that only closed most of the way. There was a door at the end of a narrow hallway that always stopped just short of shutting. It never slammed, never clicked, just leaned into the frame and stayed there. The air moved past it sometimes, nudging it inward or outward, but never enough to finish the job. There was no sound to it, no creak, no rattle, just a hush of wood and space. If you looked down the hallway, it always looked like someone had just left, but no one did. The door wasn't broken, it just didn't bother with endings. The bowl that always faced the same direction. On an open shelf in a kitchen, one ceramic bowl sat slightly tilted, its lip angled just a little higher on one side. It had been that way for months, maybe longer. Dust hadn't settled in it, but it hadn't been used either. The light caught its curve in the late morning, then left it alone for the rest of the day. Every time someone walked past, it stayed where it was, facing the same way, never nudged, never spun. It didn't contain anything anymore, but it still held its place. The log that wasn't worth splitting. Behind a cabin, near the edge of a clearing, there was a pile of firewood stacked neatly, except for one log left off to the side, not split, not stacked, just set aside. It wasn't too big or too green, just a little awkward, a little heavier than expected. The axe had bounced off it once, and it had been left leaning against something else. Over time, the other wood had been used, but the old log stayed right where it landed. Still good wood, still whole, just untouched. The blanket that forgot it had edges. A large quilt was draped over a bed, not tucked, not folded. It had no sense of symmetry, no effort at shape. It just lay there, soft and slumped, slipping slightly over one corner. Some parts overlapped twice, some didn't reach the mattress at all. The colors didn't match anymore, and the stitching had come loose in a few places. But it was warm, and it was quiet. It had stopped pretending to be neat, and that made it perfect. The path that didn't lead anywhere new. There was a narrow dirt path worn into the grass behind a house, just wide enough for one person, though no one used it much anymore. It curved once to avoid a rock, then kept going in a straight line until it faded into nothing. There was no gate, no destination, no footprints fresh enough to read. It had probably been useful once, maybe even loved, but now it just existed quietly, like something forgotten but never erased, and that was just fine. The box that was never unpacked. In the corner of a closet sat a cardboard box, taped shut but slightly caved in on top. No label, no urgency. The kind of box you meant to deal with later, long enough ago that you stopped wondering what was inside. The dust around it had settled into a ring, untouched even by feet or sweeping. It hadn't been moved in years, but it didn't seem neglected, just done traveling. Some things stay in transition forever, quietly. The step that always got skipped. On the back porch, the third wooden step had a slight warp to it. Not broken, not creaky, just shaped in a way that made people step past it without thinking. The others wore signs of use, dirt smudges and soft edges, but this one looked newer, untouched, even when animals skipped it, walking around or over with an unconscious rhythm. It didn't protest, it didn't wait, it just let the world move past. The clock that wasn't bothered by time. A clock hung on the wall of a hallway where no one checked the time. Its hands still moved, but never seemed to land on anything meaningful. The tick was soft, almost shy, The numbers were slightly faded, not from age, but from being ignored. Once a week, maybe, someone glanced at it, then kept walking. It kept ticking anyway, not for schedule, just because it could. The mirror that didn't reflect much. A small mirror rested on a shelf facing nothing in particular. The glass had dulled slightly at the edges, and the frame had been painted over more than once. It didn't show the whole room, just a corner, and that corner never changed. Sometimes light hit it and bent a little, sometimes it didn't, but it still caught something, and that seemed to be its job. The curtain that never moved the same way twice. A thin curtain hung in front of a window that didn't always open. When the breeze did find it, it moved unevenly, twisting once, folding softly, then resting again. No real flutter, no drama, just a slow, shifting shape that never repeated itself. It never blew wide open, it never tangled. It only danced a little sometimes, like it didn't know what it was reacting to, but responded anyway. The shelf that never got reorganized. A small shelf hung slightly crooked on the far wall of a laundry room. No one had touched it in years. There were things on it, a spool of thread, a chipped jar, a folded receipt, but none of them seemed important, just objects that had survived several rounds of cleaning without being chosen. The shelf leaned just enough to make everything slide a little, but never fall. Sometimes when the dryer ran, the jar would rattle faintly, not enough to draw attention, just enough to be there. No one planned to fix the tilt. The shelf still held everything it needed to, and what it held wasn't asking for anything else. The sky that didn't change all day. It wasn't gray and it wasn't blue, just something in between, like the sky had chosen a shade and committed to it for once. No clouds, no movement, no threat of rain or promise of sun. Birds flew under it, not against it. The light stayed even, like someone had turned the brightness down, without ever touching the contrast. By the time evening arrived, it looked exactly the same as it had that morning, a whole day without variety. And for some reason, that day, it was perfectly fine. The backpack that didn't get put away. By the door sat a backpack, not slumped, not stuffed, just resting with the zipper slightly open, like it was waiting for someone who forgot about it mid-task. There wasn't anything urgent inside, just a scarf, a receipt, a book with the corners turned down, the kind of things that didn't mind being left behind. The strap had curled under itself, and the back leaned against the wall like it had accepted the weight. Days passed. No one moved it. No one tripped over it. It simply became part of the room, and that was all it ever needed to be. The field that hummed sometimes. There was a patch of tall grass just beyond the fence that didn't belong to anyone. The wind passed through it like normal, and birds landed without concern. But once in a while, always in the late afternoon, it would hum, not loudly, not rhythmically, just a low sound, like a fridge too far away to unplug. No one checked on it, there were no wires, no buildings nearby. It just hummed briefly, then stopped. And when it stopped, it stayed silent for days. The grass never asked for an explanation, and neither did anyone else. The plate that always faced east. There was a ceramic plate in the cabinet that had a small chip along the rim, just sharp enough to feel, but not enough to see. Whenever someone reached for it, They always put it back with the design facing east. No one noticed this habit. It didn't matter who used it or how many times it was washed. It always was returned to that same position. The design wasn't a compass, just a faded spiral, nothing meaningful, but east felt right, and the plate didn't seem to mind. And that's all I have for tonight. The stories have come to an end, so I'll be on my way. Sleep well, and maybe we'll meet again tomorrow.